That is detectives once again going back into the crime scene in Moscow, Idaho. It has been 4 weeks since 4 college students were murdered in the middle of the night. Investigators seen going back into the home. This was on Tuesday, bringing out some items. They were in the house for about 20 minutes or so before they left. This all comes as Moscow police are ruling out any involvement of a specific white Hyundai Elantra, similar to the one they say was potentially connected to the scene. Police say the owner of the car, which is registered in Colorado, was involved in a crash in Oregon. The car was then impounded. Police say they do not believe that the owner has any connection to the murders. And they're also asking the public to now leave that owner alone. Moscow police say that they have received more than 10,000 tips. They've conducted more than 250 interviews, and they are working round the clock on this investigation. But so far, it's frustrating for people in Moscow and certainly for the families. There is still no suspect in the murders of these 4 students, and investigators also have not located the murder weapon. Joining us this morning to talk more about the case, Joseph Scott Morgan. He is a distinguished scholar of applied forensics at Jacksonville State University. Thank you once again for being with us. You know, as we watch the video of the detectives re-entering the home 4 weeks later, what might they be going in there to do once it appeared that they had essentially cleared the scene?
Yeah, I can only imagine that they're going back to add some kind of context to some other evidence that maybe they're developing outside of the scene that has been taken away at this point and that the lab has begun to analyze to see if there's anything else that they can kind of glean from what remains at the scene. Remember, they took out these so-called personal belongings that had sentimental value. And again, that can be troubling. Now they're going back into the scene to take a look at what remains behind there at the scene. They're walking in with some type of evidence kit. I can't specifically say what that is, but it looks like one that's commonly used out on scenes for any number of reasons.
How much harder is it 1, 2, 3, now 4 weeks into an investigation trying to track down this killer for investigators, for that community? Does it get harder the further it stretches on?
Yeah, time is our biggest enemy in forensics, in any case, in investigations. But what gives me hope is the fact that they're looking specifically for a car. And Marni, I have to tell you, the car that they're looking for will have perhaps specific trace evidence tiebacks to the scene. Remember, they said that they were getting some evidence back from the crime lab, or some testing had been done. There's a big process of not just identifying individuals, but also eliminating individuals. So if there's unknown DNA that they have at that scene and it can be tied back to a car, perhaps, that could be significant.
Let me ask you about something that has been in the headlines, and the attorneys for the family have gone on TV and they've shown some frustration with local law enforcement and how they're investigating it. At the end of the day, the families, the attorneys, law enforcement, the communities, other students, us in the media, we're all on the same team, right? We want to track down this killer. We want to bring them to justice for these families, for these 4 students. Does that complicate investigators' work? Does it deter from the focus of the investigation, or is it important that the pressure is on and that accountability is at the forefront?
I think that it's important to have pressure on the situation as long as goodwill is involved, that you don't have bad actors that are jumping to wild conclusions which are floating about. The car, for example, that was in Oregon, the social media ran wild over this, and it turned out to essentially be nothing at that point in time. There's even a hint that there were people standing around out there that had knowledge of that car and probably what they presumed to be the connectivity to Idaho, just private citizens gawking at it. Well, if that's a vital piece of information, if it's a vital piece of evidence, then they could have put their hands all over it. Was the vehicle secured? And so I don't see goodwill involved in that. I see self-service involved in that. So we all have to be on the same team, pushing the same direction, I think, and supporting these law enforcement officers and investigators.
Yeah. What do you make of this new video that we have obtained of the 2 students, Kaylee and Maddie, just hours before the crime was committed, walking together, referencing a man named Adam that police say they have talked to? They don't suspect he's involved. How critical of this clue is it for a timestamp? Is it for seeing them? Anything stand out to you that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think that it would be. I think that it would be significant in the sense that you have a person's name, and any person that might be peripherally related to that individual that might have knowledge. Again, here they go again. They're saying that he's not involved. I don't necessarily know that that's helpful in this particular case. They have an individual identified, so they need to pursue all of those leads. Now, I mean, my question is, are they going to go out and people begin in the public badgering this Adam person now? And it's, it shuts down a lot of lanes when this occurs, and it can be a problem. And I think it's been a problem up to this point in this case.
What do you think about the killer or killers? Because we really don't know how closely they're paying attention to the investigation, to media reports. Based on big cases that you have covered and looked at before, what's the MO? Do they distance themselves, or do they stay in plain sight thinking that no one will notice?
That's an excellent question. I think part of that rests in the idea that they don't necessarily have to stay close. What they're looking to do, I would think, is stay tuned. They can essentially follow everything that occurs in this trial, or forgive me, in this case, step by step, measure by measure. They might be on social media. They're watching everything that's going on out there, and they have information that is coming into them. And one of the keys in any kind of investigation is that if you have a suspect, the less information they have at their disposal is better for the investigation.
Yeah, as I said before, the pursuit of justice is a shared mission in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Scott Morgan, thank you as always for helping us evaluate, adding some perspective. Good to see you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too, Marni.
We'll be right back. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.